Hi, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Kelley, and this is the Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast, where we focus on embracing new ideas and methods with enthusiasm and excitement in the construction industry.
Our goal is to bridge the gap between all professions that touch the industry and create a platform for different perspectives. From suppliers to end users, we want all voices to be heard. Welcome to episode 2, where Kelley and I are going to be discussing our whys and going a little more in depth on why we started the podcast. So Kelley and I were at a lean coffee event. While we were sitting there after the lean coffee, we were kind of discussing some of the topics that were brought up, which were burnout, discussing the labor shortages, 4-day work weeks, things like that. And a lot of the attendees that were there were more towards the field. They were a lot of superintendents, a lot of carpenters.
The carpenter and foreman.
Yeah. So that was definitely interesting to hear what the topics that they brought up and what they wanted to talk about. Most of these conversations are only happening for about 8 minutes. And not everyone gets to say what they want to say. Not everyone kind of gets to voice their opinion. So we thought how cool it would be to have a platform where people can come on and talk about their passion or about, kind of their topic that they want to discuss, whether it be burnout, whether it be the labor shortage, and have them just talk for 30 minutes about it. And that way people that want to listen can listen. People that don't can press pause, can fast forward. And so, that's kind of where we got the idea.
Yeah, it was an area of I've never thought about wanting to start a podcast. Jenna, you thought it would be a cool idea to be in a podcast one day.
Mm-hmm.
And as we started talking, the ideas started flowing of, oh my gosh, look what we could do with this podcast. And we had to slow down because we were ready to start going 100 miles an hour right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to take a step back. We were like, wait, how do we start a podcast? That's a big deal first. We should probably figure that out. But we were really excited about it. I think both of us went home and told our husbands that night. And we're like, we're going to start a podcast. This is going to be so cool. And then there was a lot of work going into it until we got here. But yeah, it's an area that I would say for me, I think in episode 1, I had talked about how I didn't find my passion for the industry for much later in my career. And similar to Jenna, I was on an IPD job or an integrated project delivery job. And that started in, say, about around 2016, 2017. I got involved in those. And I loved being a part of the collaboration. I loved being able to start on a job from a very early schematic stage and start working with the architects and the engineers and really developing what the project's going to look like in lieu of getting it hard bid. We got a set of drawings, figure it out. Let's send 1,000 million RFIs in and just get out there and build it. It was more collaborative. I'm somebody that loves that collaborative environment. And I found my passion in working with teams and working together with people. And I left that project never wanting to be on a traditional job ever again. Now, that is not how we all get to do things, but it really allowed me to grow personally. And I started going to conventions, to meetings, to events, to talk more about how to improve what we're doing on construction sites every day. And loved going to them, but after a while, they're great stories, but it's usually not enough detail. It's not enough, how do I implement this tomorrow? You maybe get a couple tidbits and you can go do it, but it's usually not enough. Not everybody gets to ask their questions. Not everybody gets to try something tomorrow out on their jobs. And for me, that's something I feel is missing. And once we started talking about this podcast, it was something big for me. I want to be able to give ideas you can try out tomorrow on your job. I want to try and make changes on the job sites next day. And they may not all work, but we've got to do something different than what we're currently doing because we always resort back to the same old, same old. And I think that's just what we're missing as an industry is consistent improvement around the clock.
I agree with that. Yeah, and I mean, kind of bouncing off that, part of my passion are obviously like kind of like what I mentioned in episode 1 as well, why we even thought about doing a podcast or kind of having that idea is because some of the people I've already talked to don't really have a platform to just listen to whatever they want to listen to. And so having something where they can come on and talk about a topic that they would otherwise be really nervous to talk about because there's a lot of taboos on things that in the industry we can't really talk about, right? Like, or we feel like we can't talk about, like mental health obviously is becoming a really big topic right now. But a lot of the people that actually need to be talking about mental health are the ones who aren't really a part of those conversations, right? It's usually the carpenters and it's usually the people in the field that are working 80 hours a week that are the ones who aren't really a part of those conversations, or not the ones that are at the events, or not the ones that are able to, attend workshops and those kind of things. So having something that they can access easily on Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever, and try to find, resources, because that's kind of what we want to do here is provide resources for people for all different types of topics, and getting professionals on board and have professionals come on and talk through tools that they can actually use the next day. And then also spreading awareness. This is a huge epidemic right now, I feel like, mental health just in general, but especially in construction, because it's not talked about it as frequently as it should be.
And mental health, you're talking about how people then currently medicate themselves when you're talking about mental health. Why is drinking such a large part of the construction industry? If we're going down that path of, why are we circled around it? We were at a lean coffee with beer, right? That's very common for us and how we can get most people to show up to things. Is that a way of coping, or is that just a traditional construction thing? How do we change the mindset of how construction does things? It seems like we don't like to change. We don't want to change because, it's been doing great for 50, 100 years, but we're always staying on that path. We have so many cool ideas out there, but it's usually 1 or 2 people that want to do them. Then you've got 20 other people that you got to try and convince. Why is it so hard to convince so many more people to try a new way to build things?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it really comes down to kind of what you're saying. One of my biggest pet peeves is when something's broken or a process doesn't work, and the answer is, well, this is how we've always done it. And I think that mindset is the mindset we're trying to change. Why? If it's harder, why are we doing it that way? And why are we not finding an easier process or tool? And I know that there's a lot of tech coming out, there's a lot of software and things like that we're trying to implement. But if people don't want to use the new software, it's never going to be used to the fullest that it can be used for, right? Like, that's kind of why it's starting with the people, because we can make as many tools and processes in place as you could possibly make, but if no one's going to implement them,
Implement them with a purpose.
Right.
There's a difference between implementing a tool and then implementing a tool that then has purpose behind it, and that is a mind shift change, right? That has to happen. You can have every tool in your bucket, but if you don't know how to use it properly and how it's going to change the game for you and change the game for your team and get them to buy in, it doesn't matter. So I think that's a big thing. And when you're talking about all the technology, I think another problem with that is there's so much technology that people buy into one, and then 2 months later another one comes out. It's like, well, I like that one better, so I'm going to go do this one. So there is some of that where there's so much coming that we just want to constantly change. Not everyone, but there's constant technology, so everyone wants to try it. But as soon as it doesn't work exactly the way you want it, I don't like this anymore, I'm going to move on to the next piece of technology. So there is movement, but that's also creating some problems because we're constantly changing.
Yeah.
So I think there's both sides, constantly changing and then not enough change.
Yeah. We have a kind of like a Goldilocks thing going on. You just can't find just right.
Can't find the right bed or the right little bowl of porridge.
It's true, though. But yeah, going off of that too, I think the thought process and the way that we communicate too is a huge problem. And just in general, I mean, between every single sub industry that touches the industry, there's always going to be miscommunication. There's always going to be finger pointing, all of those kind of things going on. And I think that's kind of where we really needed to shift it, because even going on to an IPD project, there was still a lot of like hesitation, and there was a lot of lack of trust. And that was just because of traditional projects and the way that construction typically is. And I mean, I don't think we realized how bad it was until you're on a project where you're allowed to be collaborative and people are still being hesitant.
Well, and also I got this tidbit given to me just the other day of, in our market here in Colorado, it's actually a very small construction market. You actually end up working with the same people over and over and over again. And I think that's similar in other markets also, even if you're larger, but it is very common here. Why isn't that trust easier to find if you're going to be working with the same people over and over and over again?
Mm-hmm.
With the same companies? Yeah, you may work with different PMs, different supers, different foremen, but it's the same companies.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we find that trust sooner? If we're going to have the same teams consistently or the same companies, why is that trust so hard to find each project?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the fact that for whatever reason, we have jaded minds, and the jaded minds that are in leadership roles, and they're the ones who are leading these young, impressionable professions coming into the industry, and they're making them see it through their lens. And that's kind of, I think, where a lot of it's coming from, is that's how everyone's being taught how to manage. And I mean, and I don't know, I can't really speak to this either 100%, but I feel like it's pretty rare to have a younger professional say, no, I'm not gonna do it that way, because it's their boss, it's their leader. But if they have those mindsets, then they're going to continue to follow in that same path.
They're losing the mindset eventually that would help change the industry, because we are pushing it has to be this way and only this way, in lieu of feeding that mindset and allowing that. I mean, that's the same thing with apprentices. We've talked about, we want to have apprentices have a voice because they can see things. We talked about our years differences in the industry. You're going to have a different perspective than I will. Apprentices are going to have a different perspective than a journeyman that's been doing it for 30 years or a superintendent that's been doing it for 30 years. We need to allow those voices to be heard so that we can make positive changes going forward. So I think that's all areas that we want to bring to this podcast and allow these voices to be heard and allow someone to go try something different and try and make their job a little better tomorrow.
Yeah. And our goal is to have the conversations, like getting, a supplier in the room with a owner's rep and having them talk through their challenges that they both face, and kind of having those two different perspectives and having them bounce ideas off of each other. And because I think that's kind of where it lacks is construction is just a giant game of telephone, and your communication to the next person always gets construed, regardless if they mean to or not. It just does. And I mean, just like reading an email versus talking on the phone, it is a huge difference. If I read an email in the way, if I was in a really negative mindset, I'm going to read that email in a very negative way, versus like if they just called me and they were their perky, fun self, I wouldn't have even thought differently. So I think that's just the industry in general right now. But if that's kind of our goal, is to help change that and continue to grow, because I think we definitely have made progress. And I'm sure as we get more individuals on the podcast that have had those experiences in the past, they probably would tell us the same. Oh, we've come so far, but we have so much further to go.
Yeah.
And how do we continue to go down that path? There's just a lot of different personalities in the industry, and everyone has different perspectives, which is great, which is what makes our industry so awesome. But figuring out a way for those different perspectives to play together versus to bounce off each other like
the bouncy ball sticking to glue instead of just like going pew
exactly
across from each other.
Exactly. So Kelley, what would you say is your biggest why now? I know we kind of talked about your how you got into the industry and that kind of stuff. But what's your biggest reason right now for wanting to improve the industry?
My biggest why, it probably comes back to myself. I am going through my own why of why am I still in the industry. It was a question you brought up in episode 1 of why didn't I get out of the industry if I didn't have passion, or why did I stay in the industry? I found that that passion, as I said earlier, on the IPD projects, and I held on to that I'm going to keep having these little tidbits of awesomeness, working well with people, collaborating with people. I'm going to be able to, if I keep having those little tidbits, it's going to get better. Unfortunately, those tidbits are small. There's not a lot of that collaboration mindset consistently out there. So some jobs you'll get it and you'll have a great time. Sometimes you'll have a couple people that want to be a part of it. Others don't. And even on an IPD project, you can still have those problems. It's not inherent to that type of project. It's any project. That it gets very tiring to feel like you're the only one that's trying to make a change. And I want more people to be a part of that. So this last year, I've been in a personal situation where my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. And my career has always been my forefront. It's been what has made me. This is my purpose. My career was my purpose. Like I said, it never really had passion, but that was my purpose. And my daughter having her situation and having to go through chemotherapy and watching everything she has to fight for made me go, what am I fighting for myself on a daily? And I would say the beginning of this year, I hit it down. I got tired of being strong for myself. I got tired of being strong for her everywhere. And I had to find a way to come back out. And I decided to let the world kind of lead me in a direction of whichever it wanted to go. And I knew I wanted to find a bigger purpose. Started doing volunteering, trying to find other things to help with cancer support, just whatever I can do. But I also wanted to do more for my job. I wanted to find purpose in what I'm doing every single day. I wanted to have fun at work. And when this idea we had at the Lean Coffee came about, I realized this is actually something I'm really excited and want to do. And I haven't felt that in a very long time. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel, like I said earlier, I never thought, I'm going to be on a podcast. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start one. Never had that desire. I listened to them all the time, but I don't know. It was the first time I got super excited about sharing the changes in the industry that can happen, sharing other people's voices, sharing what's happening at events, and giving more to people than just, have a great day. You did awesome with production. Here's $100 gift card. A lot of the guys do love that, but there should be more. We should be doing more to change what we're doing out there. We should be doing more that makes people want to come into the industry. And that's one of our topics we want to talk about is, just that we don't have this influx of people come in to be the labor force out there. That's a major issue. How do we do that? I don't know. But we've got to do something different. And I think that's where it clicked in my brain. I think there was an aha moment. I think a couple times I texted you, Jenna. I'm like, you sure you really want to do this? Because I feel like I'm crazy because maybe you don't want to do it as bad as I want to do it. But there was the first time in a long time that I was excited about trying something and doing something new. And it made me go, this is what's going to make me want to continue forward in the industry, mm-hmm. because we're going to find ways to make it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So same question back to you. As we went down a little slow, sad hill for a minute.
I think, and I thank you for sharing that, because that your story alone is absolutely amazing. And that's why I was super excited when we were talking about it. And I already felt like we had chemistry, so I knew it was going to be good to begin with. But just your story alone and your why is just so powerful. And I think we're just going to continue to change it. And, you know, you have a really good passion and reason why behind it. I think my big why is something, and actually I was thinking about this as you're talking, and I guess I never really thought about it this way before, but being, and kind of going back to the whole being a woman in construction, is that I want to be a badass construction woman and also be a badass mom. And I want to be able to have both. And that's something that there's not a lot of talk around, you know, being able to do both. And I don't only want to be in the industry, I want to be a project manager in the industry. I want to be doing, you know, the jobs that are a little like longer hours kind of a thing and a little harder to juggle. I want to find tools and find ways that I am not having to miss out on my future kid's life because we're doing things the hard way versus like finding ways to cut the fat. No one truly wants to work 100% of the time. They want to come home to their families no matter what. They want to go home to what they love. And how can we make it so that this industry is not absolutely killing our people and having them work so hard all day long? And that is just, and everyone just says that's just the industry. Why does that have to be just the industry? I mean, there's people like that are building softwares and that are, you know, building all these other things, and they don't work that many hours. I mean, some of them probably do, but I feel like for the most part, construction, we work more hours than any other industry. I guarantee it. More physical labor hours than any other industry. And these men and women are breaking their backs. And, you know, I think that's kind of where my why comes in, is I want people to go home to their families, enjoy them, and not be so stressed out to where they're burnt out, where they have all these mental anxiety, depression, all of the stuff that's coming from an industry. We should never ever have to feel a certain way because of our job.
I got goosebumps. Not kidding. It could be that it's cold in here. No, got goosebumps because that's a great why also.
Yeah.
Our guys in the field are working over 40 hours a week. They're working Saturdays, Sundays, and they're willing to do it because they need that money to support their family. We're doing it because that's what's needed to get the job done, as you said, but it's tiring.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, it's either work or something else. And that's a hard decision to sometimes put on. And I think for me, after roughly 17 years, I had to make that decision. It was either work or my daughter. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
That was my life for 17 years. Work was me.
Yeah.
And now I have to find something different. So being badass mom, being badass construction woman, you know, to have both, it can be very difficult, but we should be finding ways to change it. So I think that was a great why also. Well, I think that's a good spot to end. I think those are some really good whys for us. We are hoping to get out 2 episodes a month going forward, one being just me and Jenna hanging out, and another one being an interview. So the next episode will be an interview, and we look forward to sharing it with you guys, and hopefully you guys will come back.